Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Neighbor let their brats take all of our Easter eggs. After that, months of paid vacation? I'll take it. And after that, would I be the jerk if I call the cops on my son? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to take anyone's Easter eggs. They probably don't even have any good candy in them anyways. So please smash that like button. And subscribe and turn on notifications for news stories from Reddit every single day. Neighbor let their brats take all of our Easter eggs. So this happened about 4 days ago, and I'm still livid. So for a quick background, I, 25 female, was in a pretty bad wreck a few months ago. Because of my injuries, I haven't been able to work, so between medical bills and lawyer fees, money's been pretty tight. My sister, Anna, has 4 kids, and I have a 3-year-old son. Before the wreck, I always went out of my way to make sure the kids had good holidays. My siblings and I didn't get anything growing up, so I spoil them. My sister is a single mom, so money is tight for her too, which is why I tried to be a good aunt and go all out. I decided to forego the extravagant Easter baskets from years past because it was out of my budget. I set them down and explained the situation. They understood and asked if we could do a family Easter egg hunt instead. I got cheap eggs in specific colors to make sure each kid knew which eggs to hunt for and bought name brand candy to put in them. I added a few dollars in some of them and a few little toys and trinkets I knew the kids would like. We decided to do it at Anna's house because she had a yard. It took me an hour to hobble around hiding eggs, but it was worth it. We started, and 2 boys came sprinting across the yard with pillowcases. They started picking up eggs with our kids. We tried to explain that this was a family thing, but they ignored us. Their dad came out while this was happening, and I tried to explain. I usually wouldn't mind, but not this time. The dad talked over me. He thanked us for doing this and said his kids were thrilled when they saw me hiding the eggs. I'm sure you don't mind a few of their friends joining in. They're just kids and they get excited. After they were done, they ran back home. They had taken most of the eggs and had messed up the number that each of our kids got. My youngest niece had yellow eggs, and they had only found 2 of them since the neighbor kids had taken them all. The kids were upset, and I was mad. The next day, I went over to their house and asked to speak to their dad. I said that I didn't care that they joined in because they were just kids, but I needed him to pay me back so I could buy more eggs to redo it with just my family. He lost it on me. He said that candy and plastic eggs are cheap, so it shouldn't matter about paying me back because it wasn't much. He started ranting about how I should have told them to stop and how I was a massive jerk for demanding money because his kids wanted to be included in what their friends were doing. He called us greedy and refused to pay me just because my family was upset that they didn't get enough eggs. He basically called me stupid and told me that the point of an egg hunt was competition. I talked to my family about this situation. My sister agrees with what I did, but my mom said I was a jerk for demanding he pay me back because it was just some cheap Easter eggs and candy, so I should just let it go. Not the jerk. An egg hunt in your own yard is not an event open to the public, and you had every right to be angry. That man would have gotten told off that day, and I would have demanded that he be the one to tell his kids to put back every single egg that they stole. You don't come into someone's yard to steal things that don't belong to you, and that's what they did. If the eggs were so cheap, he could have gotten some for his own kids. If you have an Easter egg hunt next year, each egg has a slip of paper with the name of candy on it. After the Easter egg hunt, you all go into the house where you let the kids hand you their slips of paper and you hand them the candy. If neighbor kids steal the plastic eggs, they won't get the candy. I am with you. I would have been furious. That neighbor is a jerk and is teaching his kids poor manners. Having to do this is such BS, but I do think it's a doable workaround for next year. Good thinking. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you try to get the neighbor to pay you back or not? Please let us know. I would have yelled at those brats to get off my property. I don't care how old you are. You don't come onto my property and steal my crap. Months of paid vacation? I'll take it. This happened in Germany, so the laws are different to other countries, especially to the USA. I was working for a family-owned business, about 40 employees, a couple years ago. My time there wasn't the best because I had a huge problem with my boss's younger brother. He was on an early pension and officially just working on a small part-time contract, while in reality working full-time with getting most of his salary out of pocket. That I was hired meant for him that he just worked about half the hours he worked before, and having a huge pay cut because of me really ticked him off, as you can imagine. He talked bad about me behind my back all the time and tried to get me fired. Dealing with him was a pain, but I didn't have to deal with him often. My coworkers were nice and the pay was good, so I didn't care about finding another job, despite my relationship with my boss and his wife getting worse over time too. My boss even came with me to 2 deliveries to customers because his brother probably told him I would waste time during the deliveries. On one day, I had to do a delivery with my boss's wife's car because the company car I normally used was at the inspection that morning, and the timing couldn't have been worse. I scratched the fender of her car on a wall when I tried to get out of a parking spot. The scratch was barely noticeable, but I immediately reported it to one of my coworkers so no one could say that I tried to put it under the rug. I did the delivery, and when I came back, my boss's wife was already waiting for me. She went completely crazy, screamed at me for ruining her car without inspecting the damage before, and said that she will take the money for the repair from my paycheck. I told her that I won't pay for anything because the insurance will pay for it anyways, and that's what made her snap and ended up slapping me. I immediately turned around, grabbed my stuff, clocked out, and went to the doctor to get a sick note because of mental stress, which I threw into the company's mailbox later that evening. 2 days later, I got a termination letter in the mail and had to laugh while reading just the first sentence. "We are terminating your work contract immediately, or if this isn't applicable, within the legal 30 days. To people who aren't familiar with German workers' laws, it's illegal to terminate a contract immediately and within the legal period of time in the same termination letter. You can do one or the other, but not both at the same time. So I went to the government office to apply for unemployment and hired a lawyer to sue my boss for illegal termination. Over 2.5 months went by until I got a court date, and my boss was really upset when the judge explained to him that the termination was illegal and that he had to pay me for the last 2.5 months. But the illegal termination wasn't the only mistake he made. The judge gave me 2 options. I can accept an immediate termination on that day and leave without compensation, or I can have a 2-month salary compensation, but I have to work another month for the company. My boss laughed and said that I'm too scared to go back to work and that it makes him happy that I leave the court unemployed. He didn't look that happy anymore when I asked him, "Why should I be scared? Do you want to hurt me like your wife did?" So I took option B and went to work the next morning. My boss's brother already was waiting for me to hand me the termination letter and made comments about how difficult the next 30 days would be for me. I checked the termination letter, and after I've seen that everything was right, I just said that I'm not feeling well, turned around and went to my doctor to get another 30-day sick note because of burnout. So in the end, I had 3.5 months vacation with full pay, 2 months salary compensation, and he had to pay for my lawyer too because he lost in court. I could have sued his wife for slapping me, but that would have been too much stress for maybe a couple €100. Would I be the jerk if I call the cops on my son? My son, 13 male, has repeatedly stolen from us over the past 2 years. Each time he has denied it, even when we found proof it was him. Last year, he took my husband's, male 48, bank card, added it to his Google account on an old phone, and then spent $300 on a downloaded basketball game. We found it by accident when we found him on the phone, did a search of his Google account, and found the card linked to it. He completely denied it was him and blamed his younger brother, who's 10. His brother has his own phone and never uses his older brother's. There were consequences. We grounded him and took the phone off him. The new phone is on Google Family Link, so we have a lock to prevent him buying anything. Yesterday, we discovered that someone had made 2 payments on our credit card, one for a laptop for $2,000, which was declined, and the other for a bike for $3,000, which went through. We spoke to our credit card company, and they refused to refund the money as we had been to the store before. The $2,000 attempted spend was at a store we use, but where we have never used the card before, hence it was declined. We went to the bike store where someone had spent $3,000 and they agreed to refund the money, minus the admin fee they got charged for refunds. They told us the order was placed online and printed the order for it. They said it was a click and collect order. It had my husband's name on it, but my son's email address and telephone number. They said that they phoned the number after the order was made yesterday and spoke to the person who placed the order. They said that the person was clearly a kid and was unhappy when they said that the cardholder had to be present when the bike was collected. We checked my son's email and there was no evidence of an order being placed, but there was evidence on his call log of a 2-minute call with the bike shop the day before. We also found an email from the computer shop in his email, and when we clicked on the account information, it opened in his Safari and had his username and password saved. When we went into the account, the $2,000 computer was in the basket. Despite all the evidence against him, he has blamed his younger brother. His younger brother was on my laptop in the lounge with me when the two incidents happened, so we know it was not him. My husband had left his wallet out, and the card was still there, so we know the card has not been dropped or stolen. My eldest swears it was not him. This is a significant amount of money that we cannot afford, and we are very lucky to have got most of it. My question is, would I be the jerk if I go to the police? Info. What are you expecting the police to do? Sounds like your son needs therapy. Seems like she somehow wants her son to be responsible for the money spent instead of her. I don't know why they didn't just return the bike or why the store would have allowed a 13-year-old to use someone else's credit card. OP. He paid for it online, not in-store. The card was taken from my husband's wallet to make the payment and then returned to his wallet immediately afterwards. The bike was still in the shop as they had insisted that the cardholder be present when it was collected. They refunded us most of the money, minus the administration fee for processing the refund. I'm confused. How can the police help you? I mean this in the gentlest way possible, but why don't you parent your kid? He does not need a phone or a computer. A lot of us grew up without them. He doesn't need to hang out with friends. He needs school, home, and chores until he can fess up and realize what he did was wrong. Also, therapy is a must. ETA. I have a 17-year-old son who will graduate in 1 month. He has a school-issued laptop to do schoolwork. He's a good kid and a teenager. On his rare grounding occasions, I have taken their phone and laptop I paid for, but never touched his school-issued laptop. He doesn't need therapy, he needs parenting. I'd ground the little jerk for 6 weeks minimum and take all electronics away for 12. Well, adjusted kids don't usually steal thousands of dollars and lie about it. Sometimes therapy is parenting. Well, what do you think? Should OP call the cops on her son or not? Please let us know. Aren't you glad we don't have any kids, Reddit boy? Am I the jerk for telling my wife to stop baking so often? My wife, Amanda, who's 33, took up baking as a hobby during the first lockdown and really threw herself into it. We got one of those Kenwood mixers for the kitchen and different tools and pans. She learned how to make all kinds of amazing desserts and cakes. She even discussed starting a side business one day. I know she's very passionate about it, and I love that. The problem is that it's become every day now. She's a stay-at-home mom and manages to make time. I've been trying to lose my extra lockdown pounds for the past year now, and every attempt is thwarted by the smell of some kind of new cookie or cake or pastry. I've actually put on weight since I vowed to lose it. I'm 250 pounds, which is the highest weight I've ever been. It's impossible to be healthy when there's so many home-baked goods in the house. Our entire family has put on weight too. Our daughter got a letter from the school nurse saying that she had been gaining too much, which Amanda completely dismissed. I used to take our 2 sons on runs with me, but they never want to go anymore. And when they do, they just moan, "I'm going too fast," and they get out of breath. They want to go home to play Xbox. There's always fights as well about who had how many of each pastry, and it feels like feeding time at the animal house because they all want to get their fair share before their siblings. Call me old-fashioned or the food police, but I really don't think that kids should be having desserts and home-baked goods every day, especially in the quantities we seem to be getting through. Even my mother commented on how it seems that we've all gotten chubby. Amanda is the exception to this. I suspect a little that she pushes the treats onto me and the kids because she wants to bake but doesn't want to put on weight herself, as she's always been very concerned with her weight and size. I talked to her about it, and I asked her that maybe she could bake less often or give the food to other people because it's not good for us to have around the house all the time. She said that I wasn't being supportive of her passion. She said before she feels useless because she never got back to work or to her career again, even though I appreciate the work she does around the home. I told her about how I'm trying to lose weight and be healthier, but it's really challenging to keep to any goals. And she said that I should just not eat what she makes, which is easier said than done. When I mentioned the kids, she thought I was implying she was a bad mother. She says that it makes them happy and she wasn't going to tell them what they can and can't eat if they're hungry. I told her that if they grow into obese adults one day and they wonder why that is, she'll be to blame, and she hasn't spoken to me since. Am I the jerk for putting the responsibility of the family's health on her shoulders? Edit. I highlighted a part I think many people were skipping over as they are suggesting it in the comments. She doesn't want the food going to anyone else, homeless shelters, group homes, etc. because she feels like the recipes aren't perfect yet, so she wants to keep practicing with the family. When I make those suggestions, she thinks I'm implying that we don't like her baking and gets upset. She does have anxiety, and I feel like this might play a part. Edit 2. Thank you everyone for the responses and suggestions. A few people have mentioned about eating disorders, and Amanda has a history of this. She was fully recovered when we met. It seems like that might be linked to the anxiety around her baking. Letting me and my kids have this food could be her way of making peace with how she doesn't allow herself to, or exerting control over our diets herself, or our weight gain making her look slimmer in comparison. She sees a therapist once a month for anxiety, but she's not spoken to anyone specifically about eating disorders for a while, and it wasn't on my radar at all. I think I'm going to somehow find a way to broach this subject with her. I'm also going to try and get the kids into a doctor's to do some blood tests and health checkup. Actually, I should get one done too. I don't want the kids to feel in any way responsible or at fault for this, especially our daughter, so we'll also have to be gentle here. But my main concern is the amount of sugar they must be having. Hopefully, words from the doctor might help Amanda see the reality of the problem and how it is affecting the kids. I don't know the route to take with the baking, but I think I'm going to have to set some boundaries with the kids, even if it means throwing away food and hurting Amanda's feelings. It's not fair to the kids to let it continue as it is. Also, thank you to those who made me feel better about my weight loss failings given the situation. I know it's my fault I've put on the weight, but it has felt like an uphill battle not to in this environment. Not the jerk. When the school nurse has to send a note home, there's an issue. That part really stood out to me as well. I didn't even know schools were allowed to do this, though I imagine it's not super common. It's very common. There are guidelines and required weight checks in many states. I get those letters every year because my kids are small but healthy. Not the jerk. People who are saying, have better self-control, probably have a much healthier relationship with food than people like you and me. My favorite thing in the world is sweets, and I love to bake, but I don't do it that often because I know it's hard to resist. I can resist once in a while if I'm very motivated, but every day, not a chance. I don't blame you at all for asking her to tone it down. It's not even that you asked her to stop baking, but you offered a good compromise of giving her finished products away to other people. If she loves baking, that's great, but it doesn't give her the right to insist that her family eat everything she ever makes. You're the jerk. Not for being concerned about your kids' health, that's reasonable, but your lack of self-control is your own fault, and blaming your wife because you can't stop yourself from eating too much is unfair. I get it. I have an unhealthy relationship with food too, but it's my relationship with food and it's my responsibility to handle it. I recommend seeing a dietitian and learning to take responsibility for your own eating habits. It's the only way you're going to be successful long-term at weight loss. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
I've got a solution. Maybe you can just give all those treats to Reddit boy and I. Yeah.
Am I the jerk for sometimes interrupting my girlfriend's skincare routine? I'm 29, male, and my girlfriend is 28. We've been together for a little over a year. As some background, I'm generally laid back, and she can be a bit type A. Sometimes we clash because of that. She has an overly complicated skincare routine that she does every night. It's seriously 5 or more different steps. I kinda knew about this before I moved in with her, but it was never a big deal because we were only spending the night with each other about once a week, so I didn't realize exactly how serious she is about it. Basically, she doesn't want to do anything after her routine. She doesn't want to leave the house or bum chicka wah wah afterwards because she doesn't want to sweat or expose her skin unnecessarily after she's applied some kind of chemical. I don't know exactly what. I didn't understand this part. To be fair, she usually does the routine close to bedtime, but sometimes things will come up, and I'll ask her to go pick something up from the store or things like that. We had a conversation about this because she felt like I was asking for stuff after her routine on purpose to mess with her. So she started asking me if I need something or if I want to boom chicken wah wah before she does her routine. But sometimes I'll say no and then realize I actually do want something, so I'll ask and she gets upset with me and refuses. It's only maybe once or twice a week, which isn't often at all. She says I'm being inconsiderate, but it's not like I'm doing this on purpose. I feel like she's being unreasonable and that routine interruptions are normal and nothing to be upset about. Am I the jerk here? Edit. Goodness, I didn't expect to wake up from my nap and be torn to shreds. Way too many comments to respond to. I get it, I need to say sorry and I will when she gets home tonight. To answer some of the most common questions I've seen that I didn't already answer. The store is a couple miles away, and there are no public transit options available that late. I can't afford to Uber, and my girlfriend won't let me sync her cards to my Uber account or anything. My girlfriend offered to pay for a driver's ed course, but what's the point if I don't have a car? She wouldn't let me use hers because it's really nice and I'd be too new of a driver for her to be comfortable with that. I don't think that being a new driver means being a bad driver, but okay. And I'm looking for a new job. I just wanted to take a little time off to relax, so I haven't been intensely applying, but I do apply for jobs at least once a week. You're the jerk. Let's break down some of your comments here. You can't drive for some reason. You're almost 30. It's time for you to figure out a way to manage this that does not involve your significant other being at your beck and call. Learn to drive, get a bicycle, set aside enough money for Uber or a taxi. Plan your day to take advantage of whatever mass transit is available. Pretty much anything to be an independent adult here that doesn't expect his partner to run all his errands at a moment's notice. The items you need are not life and death. You're just worried you won't remember them later. Even assuming you have some sort of executive functioning disorder that affects your memory, dude, there's an app for that. Actually, there's about 100 apps for that. Everything from a notepad on your phone to a shared Google Doc with the person you have doing your shopping for you. You could even go old school and put a paper notepad or whiteboard on the inside of your front door to write things down when they come to mind. It's time to put some coping skills into play here. This is not a nightly routine, this is a few times a week routine. It's important to her. She even asks you if there's anything you forgot before she starts, which is way more accommodating than she needs to be. You're the jerk. You sound extremely self-centered and selfish. It's very normal for women to have skincare routines that are 5+ steps. She literally warns you before she does it to avoid this exact issue. If you aren't intentionally messing with her, you must be extremely selfish. If you need something from the store after she's done her bedtime skincare routine, then maybe make a note for yourself to get that thing tomorrow. She's not your maid. She's not your mom. She doesn't have to get you something from the store because you might forget you need it the next day. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know.
Homeboy must look like Brad Pitt or something. Don't know why else she'd be with him.
Stiletto heels and rubber floors. I, 30 female, used to work for a company that outsourced a lot of graphic designs and media work to other local contractor companies. Normally my manager, 49 male, would be the one to visit these contractors with a brief and storyboard designs, but occasionally I would attend instead. We'd been working with this particular contractor for a few weeks, and on quite short notice, I was asked to cover a meeting. No problem, I said. I get along well with my manager, and he'd even loaded our van with all of our materials, 3 to 4 flip charts, and 8 or 9 small boxes of blank product templates. I had not visited this particular graphics consultancy contractor before, but when I arrived, it was clear that they had drawn inspirations for their office layout from Google. You know the type. Colorful wallpaper, beanbag chairs, arcade machines in the break room, etc. Everybody was dressed casually. Jeans, t-shirts, trainers. I didn't think anything of it until I was shown to the room where we'd be having our meeting. I think they called it the Inspiration Activity Suite or something. No doubt, where they'd do office yoga at lunchtime or something. There were 3 employees from the contractor in the meeting and just me from my company. Anyway, I straight away noted that the floor was that soft rubber style that you normally see in gyms and kids' playpens. I was in my standard office attire, which included a pair of high heels. I could clearly see that this floor was not high heel friendly. To be respectful, I went to take off my heels before I stepped into the room. I was asked by one of the guys, who turned out to be their illustrations director, "Please put your shoes back on." I politely pointed out that I didn't think my heels were suitable for the floor, and perhaps I should leave my shoes at the door. I was told again, in a slightly less friendly tone, "You must wear shoes at all times in this building." I politely smiled and said, "That's fine. Would there perhaps be a different room that we could use, please?" This time I was told in a pretty direct tone, "This room is fine. We never have any issues when your manager visits. I think this is suitable. Can we focus on the project instead of critiquing our personal protective equipment policy, please?" That little dig annoyed me. I'm a customer in their office. I'm the only one wearing heels in the entire building, and I'm trying not to ruin their trendy office space. Plus, there was no industrial equipment in this office. What was their PPE policy if everyone was wearing jeans and trainers? Anyway, I took my 2 steps into the meeting room and could feel my heels sink instantly. Well, too late now. It's a safety policy, I thought to myself. The malicious compliance? I set up each storyboard several feet away from each of the others and moved them around a few times in the meeting. I brought in all the boxes and laid them out on either side of the room. even though we didn't need the boxes for this meeting. I made as much effort as I could to walk around and be as animated as I could throughout the entire session. At the end of it, I surveyed my work. I'd left little heel imprints everywhere I'd been walking in the room. The floor wasn't technically ruined, but it was definitely less sightly than it was before I walked around on it. I'm not a big lady. I'm 5'7" and about 160, but obviously the soft rubber floor wasn't designed with stiletto heels in mind. I'm not quite sure if the contractor guy had figured out why I had originally asked, but they seemed a little bit quieter when we shook hands at the end of the meeting. They even offered to let me wait in reception and they'd bring all the storyboards and boxes out themselves. "Just grab a coffee," they said. "We'll get your equipment for you." I visited their office again a few weeks later with my manager. I purposely wore flat shoes that day, and they had put up a big sign outside that particular room saying, "No unsuitable footwear." By the time we'd finished the project about 6 months later, the rubber floor had been removed and replaced with a more traditional carpet. I'd like to say there was more to the story, but I never went back to that office, and they lost their contract for not being able to deliver the required samples for 3 separate projects. Perhaps they weren't wearing the correct PPE. Something about those trendy offices always screams, "We have horrible upper management, so we're trying to hide it by looking good." Karen demands my beach house. 10 years ago, my parents passed within 6 months of each other. I was 33, male at the time, and my little sister, Sarah, was 23, female. Losing our parents at such a young age has been rough for the both of us, but probably more consequential for Sarah being such a young adult. Upon their passing, we inherited their home, a paid-off beach house on the Central Oregon coast. I pled with Sarah to keep it with me as a joint asset/vacation home. Honestly, a lot of my motive was looking out for her and the fear of giving a 23-year-old her the one and only inheritance in one fell swoop that she could conceivably blow through and have nothing to show for it in a few years, especially as she was grieving in her natural party phase of life. I wasn't rich by any means, but was modestly comfortable with a steady job, an employed wife, we're both nurses, and we purchased a townhome together a couple years prior. I saw the house as an appreciating asset, an opportunity to generate a modest monthly income that we could both use. Plus, who doesn't want a beach house in the family? We both lived in Portland, 3.5-hour commute from the property. I saw it as an easy way to generate some steady income, but she wanted to cash out and move to California. Despite my pleas, I had no authority to stop her. The house appraised at $260,000, and my wife and I made the decision to buy her out, thus taking on a $130,000 mortgage. She got her check and did the things I feared she would do. Started with purchasing a new $40,000 SUV, YOLO'd to LA, and leased a swanky apartment with her friend. I didn't hear much from her for the next couple of years as she partied it up and blew through the remainder of her money, then moved to Vegas for a while, finally coming back to Portland 2 years ago with nothing to show for herself. As for me, keeping the house has been a struggle. It cost us countless expenses, bad luck with lousy tenants. In hindsight, we couldn't really afford the mortgage, and I look at it now as a decade wasted and unnecessary struggles. The good news is the house is probably worth $420,000 now. We have 3 kids, a 4-year-old girl and twins born last year. Our townhome is crowded to say the least, so we're looking to cash out the beach house and sell our home to buy a house to fit our growing family. I mentioned my intentions to Sarah, who freaked out, saying I can't, and "That home is all we have left of our family," which is ludicrous. We didn't grow up there. Our parents bought that house 4 years before they passed with settlement money. I never lived in it, and Sarah only did for less than a year. She says everything I said about keeping it in the family was a lie, so I should sell it back to her for what I paid. I can see the manipulative BS aspect of her play here, but I think I feel pity and guilt for her because it seems like she's finally legitimately dealing with the trauma of our parents' passing and emotionally clinging on to this house as a piece of them. I'm not giving it to her. Wife would never let me, but kind of feeling like a jerk. Am I the jerk for not giving my neighbor's kids good food? So I know that this is really stupid, but some of my friends have told me that I'm in the wrong here. To get started, here's our cast. We've got me, female 38. We've got neighbor, female 32. We've got my husband, male 39. We've got kid 1 who's 8, kid 2 who's 7, and my kid who's 8. My neighbor moved in not too long ago with her 2 sons. Seeing that she had a lot of unpacking to do, I went over to her house and offered to babysit her kids for her. She thanked me and walked her kids over to my house. I kept some of my son's toys from when he was younger. He's moved out already, and set them up in my yard. My daughter is fairly extroverted and immediately went outside to play with them. It was around noon at that time, so I started to make lunch. I made some turkey sandwiches with American cheese, a simple lunch that we always have. I brought out some plates so that the kids could eat outside on our benches. The kids loved it, and 30 minutes later the sandwiches were gone and they were back playing soccer and tag. A few hours later, the neighbor's kids and my kid marched inside and sat down, tired. I put on some cartoons and told them I would be right back as I left to go get the neighbor to pick up her kids. She looked tired, but was happy that she didn't have to deal with the boys running around while she unpacked. She came over and took her boys. By this time, my husband was parking in our driveway, home from work. My daughter had a fun time telling her father all about the day while I ordered pizza on my phone. About 5 minutes later, while I was still asking what everyone wanted, I heard a knock on my door. It was the neighbor. I thought she was going to thank me again, but she got angry and shouted at me. The following is some basic dialogue from what I can remember, though this did happen a few weeks ago. Me: "Oh, hey neighbor." Neighbor:
Look, we need to talk right now.
Me: "Oh, sure. What do you need?"
Well, my sons told me that you gave them sandwiches for lunch.
Me: "Yes, I did. They really
Well, that is not enough for my boys. They're growing boys, and they need to have good food, and not whatever you gave them."
Me: "Really?"
Yes.
No. And I shut the door in her face. My daughter didn't really hear any of our conversation, but she asked me. I just told her that the neighbor didn't like sandwiches. She didn't bother to ask further and watched some shows in her room. My husband just laughed, and so did I. The lady got mad that I fed food to her sons for free, right? But as it turns out, 3 of my close friends told me that I was rude and I should have given them something better. We had mashed potatoes and some leftover pork that wouldn't take more than 29 minutes to heat up and serve, but I didn't feel like giving them that. I don't see the problem with what I did, but I trust my friends and I want to know if I should apologize. So Reddit, am I the jerk?
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.